All right, so this story is interesting because I think it's a window into what the Biden campaign is currently thinking and how they're feeling. And spoiler alert, they're terrified. I think there's no doubt about that at this point. Look, they can read a poll, and they could probably read the last 30 polls, and they're going, holy shit, we are actually losing to Trump. They need to win the popular vote by like 3 or 4 percentage points or more in order to keep the White House. And they're down 3 or 4 percentage points, which means they're down 6 to 8 points nationally. That's to say nothing about the individual states where they're massively struggling, like in Michigan, for example, where they pissed off the entire Arab American community and Muslim American community over Gaza and over how he's backing Netanyahu no matter what. And so he's got a million problems. Well, guess what? He is now begging and pleading to have some saviors swoop in and fix the whole mess he created. Namely, the Biden campaign wants to do a first-of-its-kind fundraiser with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Bring in the previous Democratic presidents to bail out Biden's ass. That's the gist of it. So here's what they say in NBC. President Joe Biden's campaign is trying to organize a first-of-its-kind fundraiser that officials hope would be lucrative and headline-grabbing, but also energizing for Democratic voters, who so far have not shown enthusiasm for the party's 2024 ticket, according to 4 people familiar with the planning. Now, let me just pause real quick to point out the idea that trotting out Bill Clinton and Barack Obama is just a cure-all, and like that'll somehow fire up the base. I don't know what planet they're living on. Okay, we haven't necessarily had an event other than like the Democratic National Convention where you have Bill Clinton and Barack Obama headlining, right? But you have had events where either Barack Obama went or Bill Clinton went, and guess what? It didn't do Dickie McGee's axe. Remember when Hillary ran for office, she trotted out Obama to give a rousing speech for her the day before the election, and didn't do anything. It didn't help. And so I think, honestly, this is massive cope on their part. They're like, oh, this will fix it. I don't think so, fella. The idea is for 3 Democratic presidents, Biden, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, to appear together at a fundraiser this spring. The 4 people familiar with the discussion said. Discussions are underway to coordinate the president's schedules, these people said, though no date has been set. The fundraiser would likely take place in March or April. 2 of the sources familiar with the discussion said. The plan underscores the belief among Biden allies that the party needs an all-hands-on-deck approach to help him win a second term. It's also just one in a growing list of ways that Democratic leaders in the Biden campaign are gearing up for a general election they view as having the highest of stakes. The Biden campaign did not respond to requests for comment. Spokespeople for Clinton and Obama declined to comment. The Biden campaign in recent days shifted into a general election posture earlier than the president's aides anticipated. Their expectation has long been that former President Donald Trump would be Biden's opponent this fall after the Republican primary process played out. But that moment arrived this week. Biden's aides concluded after Trump's victory in New Hampshire, which followed his win in Iowa. As a result, the campaign is increasing the pace of its hiring, particularly in battleground states, and ramping up its focus on voters whose support it believes will decide the November election, officials said. Biden, for instance, has tailored recent events to black voters, including on Saturday in South Carolina. Vice President Kamala Harris on Saturday in Nevada kicked off a series of small events with Latino voters. The president's travel schedule, which has already picked up its pace, will accelerate even more so that he is out in the country a minimum of 2 days a week. It's going to be very aggressive, one White House official said. The Biden campaign also is poised to launch a multi-million-dollar ad campaign aimed at drawing a contrast with Trump, according to 2 people familiar with the plans. One of the sources said it could debut around Biden's State of the Union address, which is scheduled for early March. An earlier general election fight also requires additional campaign cash. So, look, what's notably absent from what we've read so far here, and we have to go through the rest of the article to verify this, but in most of the conversations around the campaign, what's notably absent is the elephant in the room, which is Joe Biden's failure on policy. Right? Look, he's got a giant albatross around his neck, which is the fact that he's roughly 712 years old. And, he's been in Washington, D.C. since Warren Harding was president. Like, that's one big issue he faces. But the other big issue he faces is Gaza, is arming and funding Netanyahu as he literally commits a genocide. It doesn't matter how much you try to put lipstick on the pig after that. It's still a pig, and voters are going to see a pig. So he has plummeted with Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, with young people. He has a 27% approval rating with 18 to 29-year-olds. 27%. Some polls have him at 33% nationally. They mentioned, an event for Latinos there. Well, guess what? He's underwater 4 points to Donald Trump with Latinos. The guy who first said when he launched his campaign in 2016, they're criminals, they're rapists. I assume some are good people. Like, to that guy, you're losing Latinos by 4 points. Black voters, it should be 90% with Biden, but recent poll had him at 63%. So, look, can you make up some of the ground with good campaign strategy? Yeah, you can. Anybody can. With good, proper campaign strategy and good old-fashioned hard work, yeah, you can make up some of it. If he has a good targeted campaign, raises a lot of money, runs a lot of ads, goes after Trump aggressively, calls him out on his 91 criminal charges, calls him out on his authoritarian rhetoric and trying to overthrow the election, and they are starting to do some of that stuff now, right? So can that help? Sure. Is it going to be enough to win? I don't see it unless there's also a material change. Biden's two biggest failures, Gaza is one, and the other one is letting the expanded social safety net go away after COVID. Because that's when his poll numbers took a massive dive because people materially were feeling the hurt. And so you could trot out Obama, you can trot out Bill Clinton, you could dig up Lyndon B. Johnson and put his carcass in front of a room full of freaks and weirdos. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Like, there's only so much you could do through marketing and PR. And I admit you can do some through that, but I just don't see it as being enough, right? And then Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, their poll numbers are kind of high now, right? In the moment, back when they were in power, it was a little bit lower. They're generally liked figures, especially among Democratic voters. But is that going to get it done? I don't know, man. So anyway, the ultimate takeaway from this story is I think they're desperate. And I think they know they have to do something. They just can't put their finger on what it is. And the last thing that they're really thinking about is materially changing policy. And that just shows how, I don't know, it's very snotty and elitist. This notion that obviously the voters don't care about the actual things that are happening, right? It's like, oh man, believe that at your own peril. It's going to come back to bite you in the ass. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.